I'm just absolutely thrilled to welcome our final guest of the day. And for those of you joining us online through live stream, thank you for joining us for the final session for today's NCS conference as part of the 79th Annual Reuben Awards. And please help me welcome Barbara Brandon-Croft.
Okay, so I know you can hear me because the mic is right here. Okay. So hello, National Cartoonist Society, and thank you, Boston Public Library. I am very thrilled to be part of the revolutionary art programming. I'm happy to be at the 2025 NCS conference. Oops, okay. And I appreciate all of you who stayed to listen to me. I appreciate that. A giant thanks to NCS Board President Karen Evans. The two of us have discovered we have much in common, including the fact that we both grew up at the knee of a cartoonist father, and that we continued in their field. We're members of a rather exclusive sorority. In my case, my dad and I created separate comics, decades apart, distributed by two different syndicates, which is pretty amazing, if I do say so myself. I'm grateful for this opportunity to tell my dad's story and to tell my story. It has become my mission in life to keep my dad's legacy alive. Dad passed on in 2014, and he was 87. Oh, I forgot to show Dad. There he is. So, and in today's political culture, where folks are brandishing these giant erasers, trying to eliminate certain sections of history, I'm proud to be the voice in keeping our collective history alive. There he is again. So in the late 60s, my dad, Brumsic Brandon Jr, was among the first of three pioneering Black cartoonists featuring Black characters to be syndicated in this nation's mainstream press. Let's be clear, by mainstream, it's just a euphemism for the white press. A little history to put things in perspective. For those too young, I don't know how many are too young out there, because we're cartoonists for a while, but for those too young, the 60s was a turbulent time. The country was facing a rising tide of discontent, social unrest was widespread, assassinations were commonplace, city streets were on fire. It was the height of the civil rights movement. White newspapers were struggling to find a way to appease Black readers, at least in appearance, by being give the appearance of being forward-thinking, and while things remaining status quo. Integrating the funny pages was an easy way to accomplish that, yet still profound. My dad, the Black cartoonist granted entry into the new world of the white press, included my dad. He created a comic strip called Luther, which was a nod to the recently slain civil rights icon Martin Luther King Jr., and was distributed by the Los Angeles Times Syndicate. And there was Maury Turner. Oops, I did it twice. Oh no, you know what they have anyway. Maury Turner of We Pals fame, Creator Syndicate, and Ted Shearer, who penned Quincy for King Features. They all created comic strips featuring Black children. Arguably, this is the least threatening way to bring Black characters into white homes. As you probably know, this was around the same time Charles Schulz introduced Franklin to Peanuts. It was 1968. But it was that trio of Black cartoonists that gave the country a wider audience. Its first opportunity to see Black characters drawn by Black hands. Comics have been in newspapers since the late 1800s, and from the start, Black characters were depicted as minstrel memes. You had your coons, your slackers, bug-eyes, big-lipped buffoons. Having Black cartoonists represented in the mainstream papers was radical. Talk about revolutionary art. I am proud to amplify this story. But first, I'll talk about me. It's true. I am the first Black female cartoonist to appear in the country's mainstream press. Mind you, my cartoon feature, Where I'm Coming From, did not feature children. No pickaninnies there. My characters were adults, Black women, to be specific. Never before were we seen in the white newspapers in this capacity. Not your mammies, not your Jezebels. My characters were real women talking real talk. However, I am not the first Black woman cartoonist in American papers. That distinction goes to the incredible Jackie Orms, who created Torchy Brown comics, as well as Candy and Patty Joe and Ginger, starting in the 1930s. Her work appeared in the Black press, in papers like the Pittsburgh Courier and the Chicago Defender. Thank goodness for the Black press. That's where you'll find the very first Black cartoon characters drawn by Black cartoonists. Our skin was not the butt of the joke there. I give all props to Jackie Orms. I am more nearly the female cartoonist version of Jackie Robinson, since I crossed the color line into the white newspapers. So Where I'm Coming From made its debut in the Detroit Free Press in 1989, and I am forever grateful to Marty Claus. She was the managing editor at the time, and she actively set out to find Black cartoonists. She wanted the paper to reflect the readership. Detroit is still one of our chocolate cities. The fact that she selected me is quite an honor, and I am forever in her debt. And that was the great Lee Salem. I can't say enough about Lee. I loved him and miss him deeply. He brought me into the Universal Press Syndicate fold in 1991 and remained my champion well after my syndication ended. Where I'm Coming From was distributed to more than 60 papers, both in this country and internationally, until 2005, which means I had a 14-year run, which is not too shabby, 16 years if you count Detroit Free Press. I like to think of myself as taking the ride into syndication along with the next wave of Black cartoonists that followed my dad's in the late 80s. Ray Billingsley, Curtis, still going strong since 1988. Curtis was not his first syndicated strip. Stephen Bentley, Herb and Jamal, since 1989. Rob Armstrong, Jumpstart, since 1989. Jerry Kraft with Mama's Boys, who has since skyrocketed into the stratosphere with his graphic novels. He's a great guy. And don't let me leave out what happened in 1996, Aaron Magruder. The Boondocks was a juggernaut. And then came along my Bianca Eunice, contributing to Six Chicks, Steens with her Heart of the City, and I'll apologize to all the cartoonists I'm leaving out. We are still a growing but small tribe, but I do know Crabgrass. Congratulations to the cartoonists there. Good gracious. Bacon, Keith Knight. They're all. I'm just really proud to see that these waves continue to happen, to occur. I am, I'm me. So just before the pandemic hit, a very kind Peggy Burns of Drawn and Quarterly reached out to me and said she'd like to put my story along with a collection of my comics in a book. And forgive my ignorance, but I had no idea what Drawn and Quarterly was. She sent me some of their books to edify me. I was blown away. I said, you guys make beautiful books. How are you gonna make a beautiful book out of my work? She scoffed. She said, and assured me that they could do it. Indeed, they did. They really did. And She said that my story was an important story, and it needed to be documented. I was humbled and thrilled. I still am. In 2023, my book, my backstory, plus essays, including one from a comics scholar who put my work in historical context, was assembled into a hardcover book called Where I'm Coming From. Not only did it appear in several lists of favorite books of that year, shout out to Ms. Magazine, it also received an Outstanding Book Award from, I keep looking at two things, sorry. Outstanding Book Award from the National Association of Black Journalists. And it received an Eisner nomination. Oh, and I got a Inkpot. Inkpot Award. Not long after the book's debut, I was approached by the Museum of Modern Art in New York City and asked to create a cartoon feature for their digital platform, MoMA Designs. I happily obliged, and created a memoir of sorts. Earlier this year, they included my work in their Drawn to MoMA hardcover book, which is a collection of 25 cartoonists. I'm going to use that cartoon to help me tell my story. I called it One Cartoonist Story, a mini memoir. Ever since I was a kid, I was told I could draw. I took it in stride and with pride. That's me on the end in all red, and my bestie Leslie, and my fellow emerging artists in one of our early exhibits. I was never in need of supplies. My dad was an artist. He even built a studio in our basement. Before that, he worked from the dining room table. By the early 70s, my dad was an established, nationally syndicated cartoonist and a local TV personality. I'm going to go off script, off cartoon for a minute to elaborate on my dad. So in 1968, Luther made its first appearance in the Manhattan Tribune. Luther made his first appearance in the Manhattan Tribune. Then in 1969, a Reporters News Syndicate got Luther into the Washington Post. That was a big thing. Shortly after that, Luther was picked up by the Los Angeles Times Syndicate. So in addition to doing his daily strip, that same year, Dad started what would become a 13-year run as Mr. Beebe, and also Seymour the Bookworm, a puppet he created, on a local children's television show called Time for Joya. In 1971, he illustrated a Sesame Street book called The Six-Button Dragon, written by Matt Robinson. He was the first Gordon. And in 1975, he launched another children's television series called Vegetable Soup with Melba Moore, produced by the New York State Department of Education. And he was already a regular contributor to the journal Freedom Ways, a quarterly review of the freedom movement, which was a seminal political, cultural, and literary journal of its time, known for noting Black intellectuals and artists. I'm talking Dad was among the writings of James Baldwin, Paul Robeson, Langston Hughes, Nikki Giovanni, just to name a few, and visual artists, Jacob Lawrence, Romare Bearden, Tom Feelings, and the cartoonist Oliver Harrington, one of Dad's absolute favorites. Freedom Ways is where you'll see some of Dad's most salient editorial cartoons. A little backstory to the backstory. It was Freedom Ways, his work in Freedom Ways, that got him noticed by Newsday Specials Syndicate. They wanted him to create a black strip for their papers, but they didn't want him to talk about race. How on earth? Anyway, that's how Luther was conceived. Luther's first paper was the Manhattan Tribune, but Newsday, now known as Long Island Newsday, was dragging its feet. They put Luther in Newsday once they saw the reception it received in the Manhattan paper. Oh, and he also turned out 6, count them, 6, Luther books between 1968 and 1976. All that to say, he needed help. cranking out his daily strip. So he put me and my brother to the test. He wanted to see which one of us had a steadier hand. Our mission was to draw, essentially trace, one of his characters on a light box. I won. We kept my brother's drawing up on display for a long time. It was hilarious. It's like, what? Drawing isn't his thing. But fishing is another story. Actually, he followed in my mom's steps and went into education, and while I followed in Dad's. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention our older sister, Linda. And she participated. She did not participate in the drawing contest. She was headed to Brown University. She carved out her own way and went on to become an entertainment lawyer. Anyway, that little test put me on track, unbeknownst to me at the time, to becoming a cartoonist. My job was to apply the zipper tone on his characters and sometimes ink in silhouettes. And on one occasion, I did the lettering after my dad had back surgery. My handwriting wasn't as good as his yet, but it worked in a crunch. I was paid $5 every other week when 2 weeks of Luther was due. And $5 actually was a good deal back in the early 70s, especially for a 9th grader. So when it came time for college, for me to go to college, I decided I would study art, since it seemed to come easy to me, and I like easy. And because my dad heard Syracuse University had a good art school, I applied there. Another side story on Dad. Dad attended NYU in 1945 as an art education major. He also drew cartoons and covers for Varieties, the New York humor magazine at the time. All that came to an end when Dad sold his first cartoon to a national magazine on his first attempt. Emboldened by his new professional status, he decided he didn't need NYU anymore. Okay, back to me. So SU was the only school I applied to, and to my amazement, I was accepted. Once I got there, I found out studying art was not easy. It was work, and I hate work. Plus, SU was huge, and not only that, everyone was talented. I felt very small. It's me at the bottom. I did my 4 years at the School of Visual and Performing Arts, but I didn't have a focus. I took classes willy-nilly, signed up for classes on a whim. Let's see, swimming, what? Sociology, I took all kinds of stuff. Public speaking, see how well that did for me. Anyway, so after 4 years, I had plenty of credits, but they didn't amount to a degree in anything. And that's me at the bottom saying, shh, my mom might see this. She does know. She doesn't need to be reminded. So home I went, not knowing what my no-degree having self was going to do. Although I'd been trained in cartooning, it was not something I was interested in pursuing. I felt like it was Dad's thing, not mine. In fact, he was still going strong. Luther didn't end until 1986. My 4 years at Syracuse ended in 1980. Even after Luther, Dad continued to creating comics for the Black News Consortium, Black Resources, later known as Black Media, and producing editorial cartoons and writing columns for Florida Today, not to mention his painting, his sculpting, his paper mosaics. He was absolutely prolific. So I started thinking about how much I like fashion, so I decided to go down that path. I found a want-ad in the Times, and it said, looking for a fashion reporter, trainees considered. I declared myself a trainee, brought along my portfolio, and got the gig as a fashion reporter and illustrator at Retail News Bureau. I thought I was something. I cut my hair, had trendy clothes, but the pay was next to nothing. Hoping to make more money, I managed to get an interview with the editor of an upcoming Black women's magazine called Elan. I was told by her, and by her I'm talking about Marie Brown, who is the renowned literary agent now. I told her, I said I'd do anything, And again, I bought my portfolio. After listening to me yammering on for a while, she said, "You're kind of funny and you draw. Do you think you can come up with a cartoon for us?" The very same Barbara, this very same person who said cartooning was not my thing, I gave her a very enthusiastic, "Absolutely." Somewhere in my 23-year-old mind, I was like, if he can do it, I can do it. Yeah, right? I came home. Yes, I was still living at home. And told my dad. He was thrilled and astonished. All he ever wanted to be was a cartoonist. And he worked hard to make it happen. Don't you know, when he was 14, he approached a syndicate in DC. He grew up in DC. And said, "I want to sign up." And they're like, "That's not how it's done." He said that was a valuable lesson, and he admitted his idea wasn't all that great. He was 14. And here I was, being asked to create a cartoon. He suggested I go down to the studio he built and work on some ideas. I had none. I was like, I don't know. Oh my God. Finally, a little voice in my head said, "Go for what you know. That's it. I'm going to have a cast of friends, Black women, speaking their minds, no environments, no bodies, just heads." I was a huge Jules Pfeiffer fan. I loved how he would, on occasion, have a character speak directly to the reader. I thought that was genius, so I kind of borrowed that from him. I showed a few cartoons that I created, and the editor said she loved them. "Do more. We'll think about how to pace them out over the year." So I was back on my dad's drawing table, and ideas were flying. When I had a few more ready, I called and make an appointment to show off my latest, and I was told, "I guess you haven't heard. The magazine folded." I was like, what? Oh. I had never thought I wanted to be a cartoonist. Now it felt like a calling. I was devastated. I didn't have room for this next part in my mini memoir. That's why it's mini. There's so many stories I have. But I didn't have room in this next part. But what happened next was significant. I decided to take those very cartoons that I created for Elan to Essence magazine. It made sense to me. They were the only other Black woman magazine that I was aware of. I had created it for a Black women's magazine, but it turned out Essence was not interested in putting cartoons in their pages. However, they were curious about me, and one editor asked, "What do you do since you're not making it as a cartoonist?" I said I was a fashion reporter for a trade publication. Don't you know, their fashion and beauty writer was about to go on maternity leave, and they needed a replacement. I said, "I know nothing about beauty, but I'll take the editorial test." And I got that gig. When the previous writer decided not to come back, I held that position as fashion and beauty writer at Essence for the next 5.5 years. I didn't let them forget what I wanted to do. I would draw on the proofs that we'd pass around. It's like, but and they did actually hire me to do some spot drawings and a couple of little illustrations while I was there. Okay, back to the MoMA cartoon. In 1989, my dad received the letter from the aforementioned Marty Claus from the Detroit Free Press. She asked him if he knew of any Black cartoonists he could recommend. Indeed, he did. He said to me, "Are you going to talk about being a cartoonist, or are you going to be one?" Well, I accepted the challenge. And then he asked me, "Are you presentation ready?" And I was like, "Yes." And he was like, "Do you know what presentation ready means?" And I was like, "No." But it turns out I actually was. I just dusted off the strips I had done for Elan 6 years earlier, and I sent those very same 12 strips I'd done for the magazine to Detroit. And as it says here, the rest is history. But there's so much more. That one newspaper in Detroit, I quit my job at Essence. My mom, I was going to be a professional cartoonist. My mom thought I was crazy. She said, "You need health insurance." I knew I needed more than one paper. But one paper paid $75 a week, and that wasn't going to cut it. I was no longer living home at this time. I was living, and rent is real. I was living in Brooklyn, and I wasn't going to make it. It was big. Rent was high even back then. I did know a thing or two about cartooning business, thank you, Dad. I knew that I needed a syndicate. I set out to reach all the top syndicates. I figured I'd be a sure bet since I was published already in a major newspaper and I had already started receiving fan letters. I was convinced the syndicates were going to love me. Ha. So I did what they do. I pulled together a press kit of my work, included samples, fan letters, and the press I'd begun to receive, being the female Jackie Robinson of cartooning will get you noticed. So I also put in a cover letter that kind of put the syndicates on blast. That's the inside of I forgot to hit the button. But they kind of put the syndicates on blast. I said, few black cartoonists have entered national syndication since the 1970s. None of them have been women. And I was rejected time and time again. I was even rejected by my dad's syndicate. But okay, by now it was 1990, and Luther ended in 86, so it's 4 years. How people forget. But I did receive the best rejection letter from Jay Kennedy at King Features, rest his soul. He was so kind and gentle with his rejection. He was actually encouraging. He took the time to explain why he thought my strip would not work as is and suggested changes that I might want to consider. He pointed to the unusual size, the exclusive use of talking heads, the missing environments, just to name a few things he thought weren't going to work. But he really liked my writing, and it was not the boilerplate rejection letters I'd received by most others. Jay's response was more than 2 pages. So rest easy, Jay. I really appreciate it. That was nice. But it was Lee Salem who showed bona fide interest. I was ecstatic. He offered me a development deal. Could I supply a weekly cartoon feature for Universal Press for a full year? And I was like, well, yes, I can. So I was already had contracted with Detroit Free Press, so I would pencil in a strip, send it to Universal Press, and send the inked-in version to Detroit. Easy peasy. I was like, I can do that. While waiting for the syndication thing to pan out, I got ambitious. Me? Yes. Once I hit the 1-year mark at the Free Press, I pulled together a collection of my work in book form. By that I mean I had the copy place. This was pre-Kinko's. I had them put together. What I did was of the whole year, and I had an acetate front, I had a plastic back. I did it in duplicate and then had them cut it down the middle. Yeah, I was thinking. And it was really successful. I threw book parties, like Tupperware parties, and I sold books for $10. It cost me less than half of that to make them. And I sold 100. Once I sold 100, I used that money to make more. I sold out 6 editions. Yeah, that's pretty good, right? Several months after the development deal ended, Universal decided to give Where I'm Coming From a try. Working out the deal was fun. That's when having a sister as a lawyer comes in handy. Even though I understood newbie cartoonists don't get book deals right away, I thought I should. I sold 600 books on my own. Well, within the first few years of syndication, Andrews and McNeil published 2 books. And one had the foreword by Ruby Dianasi Davis. I'm name dropping. But I was very proud of that. And their company, Oz, made a set of greeting cards. I got my first 2 papers in rather short order. So I quit my job. This time I had been working as a fashion features editor at Women's Wear Daily. I was just 5 weeks into the job. Truth be told, I only really just wanted to be able to say I worked at Women's Wear Daily. And I had already accomplished that. I was like, I'm gonna go. Very shallow, I know, but I liked it. I had been told from the beginning that you know, my vision of just using heads, no bodies, no environments, would be a hard sell, and it was. I did start to incorporate hands and to amplify expressions and use props. That notwithstanding, it was definitely not a good idea to have a different character every time I did a strip. As you know, I conceived it for a feature for a magazine. That's 12 characters a year. That's nothing. But the newspapers, that's something different. Even at my once-a-week pace, 52 characters in 1 year, that wasn't going to work. So I managed to whittle my 999,000 characters down to 9. It's still a lot, I know. But I needed my 9 Black women to show that we are not a monolith. So here's the cast. So that's Cheryl. She's my wisecracking, sarcastic one. She gets on her friends' nerves, but they appreciate her honesty. There's Jackie, the most high-strung of the crew, anxious about everything. Her friends find her exasperating and lovable. Judy is a good listener. Friends like to come to her with their problems, especially Nicole. Nicole thinks she's hot stuff. Humility is not her thing. Common sense is her deficit. Lakeisha is both pro-black. Let me start that again. Lakeisha is both pro-black and pro-women and knows that for some folks, she's seen as anti-white and anti-men. She's cool with that. Sonia is a stand-by-your-man kind of woman, although she can stand up for herself as well. Lydia is the only mom in the bunch, and she's a single mom at that, by choice. Her daughter, Riri, short for Aretha, commanding respect, having this baby brought her a newfound social awareness. Monica is physically, there she is. Monica is physically fair skin, green eyes. She's sometimes mistaken for white. She's one of the blackest characters I have. Alicia, her friends think of her as Pollyanna. She has an unshakable faith in divine destiny. So I'll share a few strips. I only featured women in my strip. Men sometimes were heard but not seen. Here's Cheryl on the phone with her boyfriend, Maurice. Oh, maybe I can see it. I actually have a magnifying thing. It has come to this. Oh, thank you. Look at that. So you're disappointed in your sister. You're disappointed in your sister because she got married? No, Maurice, it's because she changed her name. It's like we're not even related anymore. So Cheryl, if we got married, and I do mean if, you won't take my name? Your name? I have a name, thank you very much. The woman is supposed to take the man's name. Listen, I don't need a man's name to validate me. So what will you do? I'll keep my father's name. When I didn't have them speaking on the phone or directly to the reader, I had them talking to each other, giving the reader a chance to eavesdrop. Here's Jackie and wisecracking Cheryl again. Do you ever think about how beautiful Black women are? I mean, think about Angela Bassett, Vivica Fox, Halle Berry, Nia Long. Cheryl says, don't forget the Lena Hornes and the Diane Carrolls. She's like, you're right. I want to look as good as Diane Carroll when I'm her age. Fat chance she doesn't look as good as Diane Carroll now. So rude. They still love her. And here's the ever-optimistic Alicia trying to help her friend Judy. Once I had big dreams for my career. You should never give up on your dreams. I'm nearly 40. When's it going to happen? All in due time. What every successful person has said is the true triumph is in the journey. And who pays the bills while I'm tripping? And then this is just me having fun with Lydia's hair. It's a humidity piece. It's like no humidity, 20%, 40%, and 100%. She's like, I always knew I could have been a meteorologist. So where I'm coming from ended in 2005. Luckily, when the papers started to drop off, I had already started gigging again, this time as a freelance fact checker for mostly women's magazines. I still did my fashion thing on the side, working at backstage at runway shows and working as a designer sample sales, but that work was seasonal. When my syndication came to a complete end, I had a full-time job. I became a research editor at Parents magazine and ended up there for more than 18 years. That job was particularly timely. I'd gotten married and had a baby, and who was now a toddler, and I needed all the help I could get. Parents magazine was great. My friends would often encourage me to go back to cartooning, but family life and a full-time job keeps you busy. Plus, I had no venue. Put it on Facebook, put it on Instagram, they'd say. I have a love-hate relationship with social media. I resist it. One friend, Tara, suggested I use the strips I'd already done. She said she could magically, well, to me it was magical because computers make me nuts. She said we could delete the words and you could repurpose the drawings. Intriguing concept, but I was still not convinced. But in 2016, something unexpected happened, at least from my perspective. Someone got into the Oval Office that I couldn't contain myself. Here's my first post-syndication strip. I quite literally cut it out, cut and pasted it, and then penned in new words. America put white supremacy on the ballot. Guess what happened? Hashtag Obama backlash. After that, I was on a roll. I started drawing again, and I started posting on social media, and I still do. You can check me out. It's not a fancy, it's not a fancy handle, it's just my name. And it has a blue check. I did that after I got hacked a few times. There's no pay in it, but it gives me a chance to get things off my chest. So this is a later Lakeisha, and she says Major League Baseball is finally going to incorporate the stats from the Negro Leagues. Bye-bye, Babe Ruth. But don't worry, you can always say he holds the slugger record for the Caucasian League. And that's me, I started including myself. And I just say, rest easy, Josh Gibson. Ms. Lydia. Okay, countries, you can stop sending your rapists. We've got enough in the White House. It's like, check the cabinet. I cannot take it anymore. My head is going to explode. I simply can't take the news anymore. I need something else to watch. Oh, forensic files. Yeah, nothing calms my nerves like faster than a good true crime program. That's me saying, happier times. And here's Alicia. I get it. The plan is to ensure that the rich get richer, even if it takes cutting Medicaid, Medicare, and slashing Social Security. But even the richest among you cannot buy what I have and you're in so desperate need of, a soul. So I've been fortunate to get some attention from work on a larger scale. The Washington Post ran a strip I did following George Floyd murder verdict. I didn't have any words, but the hashtags read, finally, justice, keeping hope alive, the promise of America. And then The Nation ran one I did when a certain clown returned to the White House. Did I say clown? Yeah, I did. And this is Monica. I blame myself for my own despair. I've been duped. I allowed the false notion of a so-called post-racial America to seep into my psyche following the Obama wins. I completely ignored. I already knew what I already knew, and that is that until we collectively face the festering wound of racism in this nation, none of us will ever be free. That's me saying facts. And the Daily Cartoonist included one of my strips in a roundup of editorial cartoons where I spoke about Seth. This is Alicia. This is not Alicia, this is Cheryl, because she's got an attitude. Really? Now tattoos suffice as evidence as gang involvement, giving grounds for deportation? Mr. Secretary of Defense, please remove your shirt. There's a seat ready for you, Petey, on the next flight to El Salvador. And I'm talking about how the number one threat of domestic terrorism is white nationalism. I stay busy. Me and my previously mentioned friend and curator, Tara Nakashima Donahue, have worked together on an exhibit of my work and my dad's. It was a dream of mine and Dad's to do a book of our work, since we covered many of the same topics over all those years and received many of the same reactions from readers. I'm talking about the not-so-fan letters in particular. Tara said, we can make an exhibit out of it. And still, racism in America was born. We juxtaposed my dad's work with mine and labeled each piece with the year it was created. Many of the same topics Dad covered in, say, 1967 were the same I spoke on in 1994. I won't read them, but I'll just flash through them a little bit. But we talked about police brutality, white supremacy, domestic terrorism, voting rights, redlining, voter rights, I said that, and the list goes on. It's disturbing to see how much things have remained the same. Let's see, folks, I'm going to say that folks who've seen it have reported that they are moved at how much the work still resonates today. Tara and I have been enjoying reimagining the exhibit for each new location. The first one was in, oh, I forgot to show you that one. Oh yeah, the first one was in New York. And then the good people, where's Jenny? At the Billy Ireland Cartoon Library Museum, who are now the stewards of this exhibit, brought it to the Ohio State University. And so far it's traveled to University of California, Davis. Oops, that's too soon. I had a video, but we couldn't show it. Anyway, we're excited to see it go to other venues if the current administration will allow. People often ask me if my dad and I ever worked on a project together. Well, in August of 1968, 9-year-old me drew a portrait of my dad, just a floating head, and I called it My Daddy. He put in the body. Look at this hair on his legs. Actually, decades after, we were published in the same newspaper for a time. As I mentioned, Dad was a regular columnist, at an editorial cartoonist for Florida Today, and they picked up where I'm coming from. An astute reader wrote in and asked if we were related. Florida Today followed with a feature on us. This is a picture from that photo shoot. It's really staged. Like, and we were both included in the Pelican Publishing's Best Editorial Cartoons of the Year for 8 years running, from 1996 to 2003. Dad told a story about how one of his neighbors in Cocoa Beach said to him, "I think your daughter's work is better than yours." Without skipping a beat, my dad replied, "She had a better teacher." Okay, that's enough for me. That's kind of truncated, but that's me and Dad through the years. Yeah, look at his drink. He used to go into the city as an animator. We lived on Long Island, and here's this drink in his hand and me on his head. He didn't look happy. Me and Dad. Dad and me and Dad. And there's the book. So that's my presentation. If you guys have, that's good enough? Yeah. Yes. Thanks. Yeah. I could? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's so sweet.
Well,
Yeah.
so we have have 10 more minutes with Barbara, and we have some time if there's audience Q&A. So we're going to lift the lights a little bit, and we have a microphone. So if you want to hang your hand, actually, we've got one right in front of you there, if Mr. Jamar wouldn't mind handing.
Hi, was the face in the title of your exhibit the drawing of your dad when you were 9?
You know what? My dad used that face a lot in a lot of his work, so I just made it into him. But I put a mole here because he had a mole, and put a goatee on it. But yeah, so we continue to use that face that he used again and again in his work, and to show this, the poster for Still and things like that. But yeah, that was me stealing something again. Yeah.
So I'm curious on what kind of comments or letters you got from the papers, both good and bad, about your strips.
Yeah. So when I first started in Detroit and I started getting letters, they were positive. A lot of people were writing into me, it's like, how do you know what my life is? How did you get it so well? They felt like I was telling their story, killing them softly with my cartoon. It's what I was, and that was a high compliment to me. So my dad got letters too. It was just being able to see yourself in the paper where you weren't able to see yourself in a newspaper at that time. The not so nice letters, Dad got one where the person ripped out the cartoon from their paper and said, I don't like seeing these little in my paper, Like, all right. And I got one that said, I think you should go back to Africa and take Jesse Jackson with you. I mean, so it was that kind of stuff that we kind of hear now. It's like that's been unleashed again. But yeah, so I had a file of fan letters and not so fan letters.
Is there another generation of cartoonists?
In my family?
Yeah.
Oh, not so far. My son, thank you. My son is a performer. My husband's a musician, right? And he actually teaches at Berkeley, associate professor. And my son is also a performer. And we were talking about YouTube, not YouTube, what do you call it? TikTok, yes. I was so proud to tell him. I was like, I have 2,000 followers on Instagram. He's like, that's great. I was like, how many followers do you have? 80,000. I was like, what? So, he's not a cartoonist though. He's a creator and he's very funny, but I haven't seen him do any cartoons.
I'm curious, especially with this new book coming out, and younger cartoonists getting a chance to see your work again, what has been some of the, encouragement and sort of, guidance you've given or you suggested to younger cartoonists who are trying to respond to what's happening now for the first time?
Yeah. So it's interesting because I get younger cartoonists asking me what they can do, and I'm like, I can't really tell you what to do because I'm not really good with even the computer, It's like, and that's where it is. That's where comics live now, and I don't know how to do it. But on the other side of that, they like knowing that I stuck to my guns, and people have come up to me later and said, you made me feel like I should stick to it. I said, I did, I don't have a mansion, but, I'm happier, I'm happy to tell my story and okay, this is what my dad always said, is that a cartoonist's job was to observe, interpret, and record. And so take that to heart. I pass that knowledge down to do that. And when you're coming from your own perspective, you've got a sure thing. I think, it's like you're an individual and just do it. Don't be worried about what else other people think you should do, and just do your thing.
This has been wonderful, and I really like that you've explained where you're coming from, because I wasn't sure I always got it, but I'm a fellow Syracuse graduate with Rob Armstrong. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, it being big.
Yeah.
It's huge. One comment, not a criticism, but you left out somebody that was one of my favorites, was Ted Shear that did Quincy. I worked with him.
Hold up. Ted Shear did Quincy, and I did mention him. He was one of the trios, yeah.
Oh, I came
As a
in
matter
late.
of fact, it was the three of them, Dad, Maury Turner, and Ted Shearer. And both Ted Shearer and Maury Turner wrote letters to my dad congratulating him on me entering the field.
Oh, okay.
What? That's kind of cool, So no, I would never.
Yeah, Ted was a great guy.
He was
I
great.
worked with him for quite a while on a Consumer Reports thing, Penny Power magazine for kids.
Yes.
And he did this thing called the Penny Power Kids, which was
He
all
was
about
great.
the neighborhood and all the kids learning about money and
Yeah.
saving and all that stuff. It was great.
Important stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
You graduated from Syracuse?
Yes, way before you.
Well, I didn't graduate, so I guess.
Oh, I forgot that part. Right. I was trying not to bring that up.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Just have a quick comment. I'm looking at the hairstyles in the bottom right on that image. I'm just looking at the top of that hair. How quick were you able to draw that? Because that's a really complicated. Guys, just follow that with your eye. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's very good.
It's kind of, thank you. It's kind of my Carville hairdo. Oh, man. I thank you guys for being here.
Can I say something real quick?
Sure.
I just have to say how much of an inspiration you are to me.
Oh.
I'll make myself cry. And just seeing all those images of these trailblazers, and you're one of them, it's very inspirational to me and to what I'm doing with my career. So I just wanted to give you your flowers. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate that.